on this computer. Okay, it indicates that we are recording. Go ahead.
Sounds good. Well, welcome to the August SLAARC meeting of 2020, and good to see everybody here. What I'm going to talk about tonight is antennas, how you can maximize their performance through the use of a vector network analyzer, or VNA for short. There are a number of them out there, and just to give a little background, I got into ham radio back in the 80s. I initially learned CW courtesy of the United States Navy. I'm not in focus. What's going on with my autofocus? Doesn't seem to be focusing real well. Anyway, I was a manual Morse intercept operator for the US Navy for 3.5 years. I got a 6-month early out. And so I always wanted to get into amateur radio, but had trouble dealing with the code, and they taught me how to do it. So that's kind of my background, and I could look it up, but in the 80s is when I got my first ticket. Anyway, as time went on, I realized, and from my experience in the Navy, I knew that antennas were very important to amateur radio as well as any kind of radio communications. So my first antenna analyzer was an MFJ 259 that came out, and I bought that on 10/10 of 2001, paid $259.95. I thought that was pretty interesting, the MFJ 259, and it was $259. So I noticed that when I was looking up the data. And that was a nice addition to the shack to allow me to do the things that I felt I needed to do, checking SWR, but it seemed to lack in repeatability. The knob was variable, and just in general, it gave me some information, but not all the information that I felt that I needed. So I limped along with that for 9 years. And then Array Solutions came out with something called an AIM 4170. And on 6/3 of 2010, 9 years after I bought the MFJ, I purchased an Array Solutions AIM 4170. And it was a true vector network analyzer. And it was $555, not exactly cheap. Twice the price and then some of the MFJ. But it allowed me to do a lot more things, and I learned about things more than SWR. I learned about return loss and a number of other parameters, but basically now, instead of seeing that, yes, there was a null in the SWR on a certain band, and it looked as though it was at a certain frequency, the MFJ wasn't all that accurate, shall we say, as being the exact frequency. So the Array Solutions allowed me to set a couple of parameters, start and stop frequency, and scan that. And I could see an actual picture of the SWR over that range of band, and that was really nice. And I know Bruce, W8RA, purchased one of those back in the day. You purchased one after I did, or did you get yours first? I don't remember. You're muted.
Not very either, Mike, but it was a very similar time frame.
Yeah, it was pretty close, because either you got one and I said, "Oh, I got to have one," or it was the other way around, one of the two.
Yeah.
But that was really nice. The software was a little bit quirky, but it had some really nice features that isn't always available on a VNA, and so that allowed me to take a lot more measurements, and it allowed me to store the measurements so that I could compare what was going on today with my antenna as to what was going on 6 months ago. And I wound up helping a lot of other club members and non-club members, other amateurs, figure out what was going on with their antennas. And the nice thing is, when you've got something like that displayed on a PC on a decent sized screen, you wound up, you could go and tweak the antenna and come back and run another scan and see what that tweaking actually did for or against what you wanted it to do. So that was very helpful. A year later, a little over a year later, Steve, he's not with us right now. I'm going to give him, oh, there he is. Yes, Steve. Steve put a little bug in my ear. He basically said, boy, there's this really neat kit that you can get that has all kinds of stuff. And it looks like it's a lot better than the Array Solutions. And it's a kit that you can buy from a place in England. And he was on a distribution list for all of the stuff about that, and he was always telling me about this stuff, and he kept telling me, you know, I really ought to get one of those, but I it's kind of hard to justify it because I've got the HP one on the rack and it works just fine. And so he got me all excited about it, and so I decided to do that. And so I spent, at the time, $588.73, a little bit more than the Array Solutions, and bought the DG8SAQ VNWA. Now, there are books. Now, all of the information that I'm giving you, I will send out as a PDF file. So it'll have all of the links to these places and where to get this book. Also, on August 6th of 2013, this particular document, which is the VNWA 3 manual, it's actually just a PDF file of all of the documentation, was 326 pages. That's what this is. That's from 2013. I have been purchasing. I have been downloading the free updates to that, and the latest update came out in February of this year, and it has 555 pages. So they've added to the instructions and how to do certain things significantly. This is not a trivial, you know, this is a lot of good stuff, none of which I have read completely. Well, I haven't read it completely, but there are all kinds of things that you can do with a VNA, and antenna analyzing is just one area. We use the TDR measurement. Steve and I, we had a problem with the antenna at the secondary site, and we weren't sure what the problem was, and we ran a time delay reflectometer reading with my VNWA, and it basically told us that about the same distance from where we were to the bottom of the tower at Bruce's location, there was a big blip in the, so there was something wrong there. And because of that, we decided, well, let's take out the lightning arrestor that's at that location, because maybe that's it. And we put a new one in, and our problem went away like that. So there are a lot of things you can do with the VNA besides just looking at SWR and so forth. Now, I have some web links, and I have to pull them up. So I'm going to go here and open up this, and let's see. All right. Now, I'm going to put this over here, and I'm going to share the screen so you can look at. Everybody see the MFJ 259?
Oh,
Not yet.
Oh, I have to say share, don't I? Duh. See it now?
yes.
Okay, so that was the original device that I bought. And you, as you can see, there are, well, you can't see me point. This is a little strange, but anyway, you've got different frequency bands, and then the tune showed you somewhere in that band, but it didn't tell you exactly what frequency you were at, and that's the problem I had with it. I knew that I was in the 11 to 28 megahertz range, but I didn't know exactly what the frequency was. So that's the problem I had with that device. Now the next thing, here is the 4170. And this is the Array Solutions. I couldn't find something on their website because they've discontinued this, but this talks about the Array Solutions analyzer, and you'll notice that it has a single connection. If you've got a 2-port VNA, you can do a lot more. You know, this getting old stuff is a real pain. There are more measurements that you can make if it has 2 ports. And this worked real fine for me, but the problem I had with the AIM 4170 is it only went to 70 megahertz. And I wanted to be able to do both 2 meters and 440, and it didn't allow me to measure 440 meter antennas. And the Novi Club, which is what I was with at that point in time, had a 440 repeater, and we had problems sometimes, and this wouldn't help us resolve those problems. So that's the other reason why when Steve talked to me about the DG8SAQ VNWA and the fact that it goes to, well, here, I'll show you. We'll go to the next website. Oh, first I'll go to, these are the current vector network analyzers from Array Solutions. And the AIM 4300 is the replacement to the 4170, and currently that's $899. And if you want to get up into the gigahertz range to be able to do 440, here's the VNA UHF 2-port vector network analyzer up to 1200 megahertz or 1.2 gigs, $1,295. And I can do the same things that it can do with my $588 DG8SAQ VNA. So all in all, I think I made the right decision. Now I will take you to the last, and all of these links will be in the PDF file that I will send out to everybody after this meeting. Here is what it looks like, or what it originally looked like. This is the DG8SAQ VNWA 3 low-cost 1.3 gigahertz vector network analyzer. And if you scroll down, this is the latest link, and if you see up here, you can get all kinds of information. So the single link that will take you to this page, you can go to here, and here's the software and documentation. If you click on that, you go to the software and documentation, and that's where you can download the latest version of the help file. You can download the software. You can do all kinds of good things. So that's a link to definitely look at. If you scroll further down here, you'll see that here is the old SMA connector, and they've created a box with N connectors on it that you can buy to, if you want to do things with something besides an SMA connector, this is the box you buy. It's, I think, 25 English pounds, whatever that is, whatever that converts to today. And that's something relatively new. And okay. So I'm going to close these. I'm going to stop. How do I? Oh, your screen sharing, stop share. I'm learning all this stuff. Okay, so now what happened to me? Okay, put it over here. All right, now we're back. So now you'll see this is, if you look at the back, it's just like the one in there. Boy,
There it is.
there, yeah. I'm gonna have to figure out what's going on with that. What I had the idea, and Steve implemented the idea, and together meaning I stood and watched Steve create this two squares, two little boxes that fit together. And so the VNWA is in this part of it here. Oh, is in this part, okay? And from here to here is just a little cable that has an SMA connector that goes to the end connectors here in the front. So I made, I did that within, what? We did that within a week or two of when I actually got the VNWA, didn't we, Steve?
I don't remember.
Okay, I'm pretty sure that's the case. And because the issue is if you use SMA connectors and you put things on and put things off and put them on and put them off, they're very good. They handle things up to 3 gigahertz or something like that, but they're very touchy, and you can wear them out with too much connection and disconnection. So I said, oh, okay, instead of doing that, what I would do is create this box, and in the box has a connection from an SMA that I've never disconnected, and it connects to the end connectors. And then of course I've got an adapter here, which adapts the end connectors to a PL259 SO239 for your standard, what most amateurs use for their coax connections. So that has been the device that I've used for, well, ever since I got it in 2011. I bought a Pelican case and created cutouts. And one of the things that you'll find out, it's powered by a USB connection to a PC. And that those devices in there are things that you use to calibrate it, because you have to calibrate a VNA. That's one of the critical pieces. So that little box allows me to do all of the things that I need to do with this device. So that's kind of the background. Any questions to this point? Anybody?
Your
You got muted again.
your calibration devices that are in your yellow case.
Yes.
Did you get N versions of those? Is that?
Yes. Yes. Yes, that's exactly what I did.
Okay, so you don't take the SMAs off to calibrate.
No, because the calibration is from the point at which you're going to test things. So those could be a 3-foot long cable if you wanted, as long as you continue to use that 3-foot cable. It's a calibration at that point from the device, and
Okay.
the distance is figured out, or the equations in the software. As long as you're always doing it from that point, that's where it's calibrated to. Now,
Can you
obviously,
make those?
yes. Basically, you can make this. Well, let's see. Actually, I bought them because the 50 ohm load has to be, it's a end connector with a 50 ohm in it. The open is just an end connector with nothing in it. And then you've got a short, which is a standard end connector. Come on, focus. Anyway, so I bought those online, and they're not particularly expensive, and they're not particularly, the word I'm looking for is
Complicated?
no. God,
What do you mean?
they're not the most accurate things in the world,
But they're good for HF.
but they're good for HF and VHF and UHF. Actually, if you go into the,
Well, maybe UHF.
they're close enough. They give you something. And the thing is with UHF, there's not all that much that we do, that we use it for. I wanted UHF, and once I got it, I thought I didn't use it all that much. I use it on HF more than anything else. So the accuracy of this as a calibration set is sufficient for HF work, definitely, and VHF. That answer your question?
The important one is the resistor. It's got to be non-inductive, non-capacitive, that kind of thing. So,
Right, which is why I bought it. And this is a NARDA model 370 BT or BNM up to 18 gigahertz with 5 watts of power it'll handle. So I paid a fair amount for that, but not what some of the calibration kits cost. Anyway, so
why did you choose end connectors for your calibration set?
I don't remember.
What,
Compared to the PL259, SO239, the end connectors constant impedance, 50 ohms.
Well, we know
Yes.
that, but they're less they're less used in most of the work that we do. So you're constantly running around with an adapter for them.
Well, but the adapter is there, and it fits in the box. And actually, Cecil was correct. It's because it's not just that they're 50 ohms versus something else. They also can go up to higher frequencies. So I figured if I was going to use this at some of the higher frequency ranges at some point, having the ends built in, then I wouldn't have to change anything. I can just put the adapter on for the HF stuff, and then use the ends at times when we use ends. And actually we have used the end connectors because the repeater has end connectors on it.
Well, I don't question that. What I'm getting at is this: most of the time, people use PL259s for their feed lines, so you do need your adapter there at the VNA. You're also going to need an adapter out at the other end of that feed line that's got a PL259 on it. So you're going to need 2 adapters because you're going to have.
You mean if you're going to take the coax measurement out of the equation?
Exactly.
Well, don't do it that often, but I have the other connector, so.
Yeah, well, I guess that's what I was getting at.
It doesn't matter because the calibration takes all that out anyway. So it doesn't matter if you put a adapter from N to PL259 and use a PL259 coax out to your antenna and calibrate out at your antenna. It's all taken out by the equations.
Well,
And you're free at that end, of course, to use a PL259 SOL short, open, and load if you want.
Well, I guess you
They're
would need,
harder to, the problem is you can't, a PL259, you can't buy good loads, you basically make your own, which is fine for HF. So
Array Solutions provided me with fine.
yeah, Yeah,
Mine
you can,
ones.
yeah, they do, right? And you can make your own.
Mhm.
But if you want accuracy, better accuracy at the higher frequencies, then you're better off with that end connector. You take that end connector and use my HP Cal kit, and you've got real accuracy. The problem with Mike's is that the reference plane moves around because he's got the open is not a precise open. A precise open, he gets into this kind of thing in that book that Mike's got, and how you really make good loads. The thing is that there's assumptions made on those loads in terms of the equations that are used, so that at higher frequencies, the better you can make the loads and the more and enter the correct numbers for, I don't know, there's on an open, there's an inductance term and a couple capacitance terms that they end up in the equation. And if you look at a very characterized, a very good load, short open load calibration set will have all those numbers.
Well, I guess you'd wind up with adapters no matter which one you chose. If you're going to go to UHF or VHF end connectors, if you had chosen the PL259 loads, you would wind up with an adapter. If you chose end connectors, you were going to wind up with adapters connecting to PL259. So it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Thanks for jumping in, Steve, because I certainly don't know it to that level.
What I don't like is the use of ends, because they're not really you can wiggle them. And the one I have, which was on the website that Mike showed, the FA, okay, now I can't remember the number. They put end connectors on, so I remade it and put TNC connectors on it, and then I put whatever adapter I want to use on that and calibrate, so I can go TNC to SMA, TNC to N, and TNC to UHF, and then I have calibration loads for any of those connectors, so I can calibrate right there.
And it boils down to how much accuracy is.
Well, and at HF, it really doesn't matter. I mean, if you look at the loads that are provided by DX Engineering, yeah, it's 50 ohms, but they're not terribly accurate at the higher frequencies, but you get away with it.
Okay. Good question. Good answer. Thanks, Steve. Where am I going? Okay. So we've talked about what this is, why it's here, and I gotta work on this camera. It's not working the way it's supposed to. Anyway, now what I want to do is actually show you the software. So I'm going to pull up. Well, first I should share my screen. And it's going to be this screen and share. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my ham radio. Oh, come on.
Pretty car.
Yeah. It's my dream car. Okay, this is the latest version of the VNWA software. And this has a sweep on it that is something that I did earlier today. But the really nice thing about this is I can open up a file and I can import data, S1P data to S11. And now I can go to things that I set up for this presentation. As you can see right here, 8/9/2020 SLAARC presentation. These are all things that I have used this VNWA on over the years. Let's start with 10 meters. I've got AC8IL, Scotty's Titan DX final 10 meter antenna. So I can bring that in and show you exactly what we saw on 7/14 of 2013 on his system. And it wasn't very good. I'm gonna use the cursor to show you what's going on. This line right here is 2-to-1 SWR. This is 2.5-to-1 SWR. This is 3.3-to-1. And there's 4-to-1. And this particular point, if you look down here, number 2, that's 3.46-to-1 is the best SWR he's got on 10 meters on that Titan DX on that day. Not particularly good. Now, if I go to import data, S1P to S11, same folder, Don Kadar's vertical 10 meter before we touched it. This is the way it was as he put it, as he got out of the box. This is his 10 meter vertical. And you'll notice here, 0.2 is 1.1-to-1, and the frequency is 28.830. So very good SWR. And he wanted it, he wanted it down in the CW range because he wanted to work CW on 10 meters. So we went out and adjusted his antenna, and I can show you the data. Don Kadar vertical 10 meter final. This is after we got the adjustment done, and it put it right where he wanted it at 28.235 megahertz, 1.04-to-1. So you can see how this can be helpful when you're playing with antennas and adjusting antennas to see exactly what's going on.
That is certainly a broadband antenna, though. My goodness.
Well,
29, I can't see it right, 29.
28 megahertz to 29.6 megahertz.
And it's less than 1.5-to-1, it looks like.
Yep.
What's the blue line?
The blue, I was waiting for somebody to answer that, or to ask that. That is what's called return loss. And the lower the return loss, the lower the point will be. And right here, that's minus 33.9 dB down. And that's how much you lose via the SWR of your signal. So the loss is—
That's the amount of energy that's returned from what's sent at the antenna. It's down by that amount. And of course, the perfect match would be infinite return loss. There would be no return. So the lower, the bigger that number is, the bigger the return loss, the lower the SWR is going to be.
I always think that loss is kind of implies that something went away. I think of that, a return loss, in the sense that it's a lesser amount of power, because if you have a good antenna out there, it radiates that energy away.
instead of sending it back to the beginning.
Right.
Exactly.
If you short the antenna or take the antenna off, it's all reflected back.
Yeah, there's no loss. Whatever you send out comes back.
Yes.
Right. Zero return loss is infinite this far.
It's the new way of saying reflected power.
Well, they're all kind of 6 and 7 of, return loss, SWR, it all kind of goes back and forth. But I just think of that as a good thing, because less power is coming back down the transmission line, or it's being radiated away by the antenna.
For me, it's a very good indicator, because typically you'll see the return loss and the SWR lowest points are fairly close together, not off by much, if at all.
They have to be the same, Mike.
Okay. The thing is, I have seen low SWR in band, and the SWR was pretty high on an antenna, and I would look further out and I'd see a much lower SWR, and the return loss was low there, and it wasn't on in band. So it was an antenna that was out of band, was where its resonant point was and where its lowest SWR and therefore lowest return loss. So it's a real good indicator that even though you see an SWR reading, especially like on the MFJ, doesn't mean that's the lowest on that antenna. That doesn't mean it's the resonant point for that antenna. And the ability to increase what you're scanning to look at the top side or the bottom side of whatever band you're looking at, you can see, oh, gee, it's going down and it's lowest at the side, but it's still high SWR. Maybe it goes down further up the band or down the band.
Could you
So
click on S11 Smith?
Yeah.
Ah, now I can understand what we got.
Okay. Can you explain it?
Well, the middle, that's the Smith chart, and right in the middle. I can't point to it. You can point to the middle of the Smith chart.
Okay. Yep.
That's 50 ohms. Anything, well, not that, to the right a little bit, to the left, right there's the middle. That's 50 ohms. Anything below it is going to be capacitive in terms of the phase of the VSWR. Anything above is going to be inductive. The VSWR circles, constant VSR circles around that point. So, and where it crosses the line is where we say that it's resonant, where it crosses that line that you're on right now. That's the real line. There's no inductive or capacitance in that, on that line from one end to the other. The short at the left side and open at the right side.
Right.
Hard to explain without pointing to it, but so
That's why I didn't try.
So you can see that it's resonant at a point where it's lower in real resistance than 50 ohms, and it's resonant at a point higher, and then it's resonant at another point considerably lower in resistance, because it crosses in 3 places.
yeah.
Right.
However, the danger here is that my guess is that Mike made these measurements at the end of a piece of coax and not at the antenna, and therefore it's hard to
Yes.
interpret what you're looking
Yes.
at here. If
That's
you could artificially back that out with the delay parameter that you can do here to see what it really looks like with the antenna. You wouldn't find that going those resonances 3 times if you were looking at the antenna itself.
This was done before I knew as much about it as I know now.
Yeah.
So that was what was being seen at the connection to the rig, and a lot of it was affected by the coax, which is what Steve is explaining. And let's see.
We could actually play with that sometime. Go ahead and do your presentation, then maybe we'll go back and put the delay in so you can approximate what it really looked like at the antenna.
Okay, why don't we do it now? Yeah, see, that was in 2015. That was,
Because it might take me a while to figure it out, Mike. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, all right.
You can come back.
N1NEZ is a member of the Novi Club, and Steve and I went over there to help him put up an end-fed antenna. And here is the scan that we got from his on 10 meters. It looks really weird. It's going up and then it's going down, and I don't know. Do you remember that? And when we went over there,
I don't think I was there, Mike, but the standard ham answer is that's all right. I can use a tuner. It's less than 3 to 1.
Yeah, and not. Yeah, actually, you and I went over there to help him install his end-fed antenna out into the woods in Novi, and N1NEZ. Rick, I can't think of his name.
Randy. Name's Randy.
Yes, Randy.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, doesn't matter.
We have since raised it a little higher. We moved it up a little bit.
Did that help?
He doesn't use it that much, so it's kind of hard to say. We didn't run it.
There's a reason why he doesn't use it too much. It wasn't much of an antenna.
Well, in his location,
Yeah. He didn't have any choice.
exactly.
Okay, so yes.
One question. I think Steve mentioned that this is probably a measurement at the end of a piece of coax as opposed to a measurement at the antenna.
No, the other way around.
Okay. How do you measure at the antenna without using any coax? Or are you talking about a very short piece?
You calibrate at the end of the coax. Take all that out.
Ah, okay. I got it.
You make 3 trips out to the end of the coax, put your loads on it, open short and the load, and you do your calibration, and then whatever you measure will be, the measurements will be made right at that point you did the calibration.
Okay.
So that will tell you what the antenna is doing, and then you do it again at the rig, and if they're widely different, then you start thinking about replacing that coax. Okay, obviously I have lots of things here. One of the things I want to look at are 80 meters, okay? And let's see, we're not going to do mine. Okay. Here is the Titan DX at Scotty's location. They're in Wixom, okay? This is a Titan DX, and his lowest SWR is on 80 meters is at 3.937 megahertz, 1.29 to 1, okay? Not too bad, all right? Now, if we look at, let's see, import data, S1P to S11, that was Scotty's. Here's Don Kadar's 80 meter, and he wanted it down in the CW band again, and so this is 1.35 to 1 at 3.519 megahertz, and this is after we adjusted things, but we were able to make those adjustments and go back inside and look and adjust a little more, go back. We were back and forth 3 or 4 times to get it exactly where he wanted it, but we were able to make it work where he wanted it. And that's what a VNWA will help you with. Now notice how much of the band is at 3 to 1 or less. It's just this section in here. Anything below this line, that's 3 to 1 or less. Now we're going to look at mine. Import data. Okay, let's look at 2017, 2018. Okay, this is the latest one. Okay, 1/8 of 2018.
Wow.
Anybody notice the difference?
Yeah, much wider.
Much
lower.
wider bandwidth. And the reason for that is I bought a DX Blaster cage dipole, and it basically has, you can look at the little picture so you can see me. It has rings that are about 8 or 10 inches in diameter, and it has 6 wires going through those rings. So it's really a cage. And one of the things that you'll know, or hopefully will remember from when you were first looking at antennas, is the larger the wire is, the broader band the broader the bandwidth of transmitting on it at any given frequency. And in essence, a cage dipole makes it look at RF levels like the wire is that big around.
What's the SWR at 4 megahertz?
At 4 megahertz, it is, let's see, 2.43 to 1.
Wow.
And here's the thing. This line right here is 2 to 1. This is 2.5 to 1. And this is 3 to 1. Almost the entire band is at 3 to 1 or less. And most of the band is at 2.5 to 1 or less. So it's pretty sweet. I don't use any, well, I do use an external tuner because I get a little more out of it that way, but I wouldn't have to on that. Now we're going to look at we'll go to 160. Okay. Here is my, in 2017, here's my 160 meter inverted V. It's a single wire and it's cut to 160 meter dipole length. And that's the best I can do bandwidth wise. Not particularly great, but with the tuner, I can, you know, cover pretty much any place in the band, but you don't put out nearly as much power when the SWR down in the band is so high. So the tuner, one of the mistakes that I made early on that a lot of people make is that, well, we'll just use a tuner and it'll work just fine. All a tuner does is make your radio happy that it's seeing 50 ohms. And transistor rigs especially, if they don't see 50 ohms, they don't like it. But in order to do that, you waste lots of power. So I don't know what the numbers would be, but obviously, if you use a tuner down in this range, anything, you know, this is 6 to 1 right up here, and it probably goes up much higher. And so if you're down in this range, your 100 watts is probably 10 watts if you're lucky, and maybe less than that.
You're heating up coax.
Yes, heating up your antenna tuner.
Yeah, that and coax. That's what all this return loss is up here.
Yeah. Okay. File.
The only way an antenna radiates is by being resonant. So you can't get around that.
Now, the last thing I want to look at is 20 meters. You notice I have lots of things that if you want to see, we can see lots of stuff. But here is AC8IL's 20 meter Titan DX. And it's at its lowest point, it's 2.15 to 1 at 14,351 megahertz. So at 14,350, it's more than that, but it's less than 2.5 to 1. That needed tuning, and if we tuned that to where he wanted it to not have to use an antenna tuner, then all the other bands were messed up. So we left it that way.
So this is like a tri-bander, or is it?
No, it's a vertical. It's a Titan DX vertical,
Okay.
which has lots of little rods for the different bands.
Yeah.
And we did the best we could, but let's see.
Was there a manual for tuning this somehow?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it was difficult to say the very least.
I think.
Now here's Don Kadar's 20 meter, his vertical, and not bad, but he wanted it down in the CW range. So that's where it was when we started. And if we go here, import data to S11, and picked on KDAR's 20-meter vertical final. This is after we adjusted it. That was as far as down as we could get.
Now, is that a single band vertical?
No, no, it's a multi-band. I forget what it was. Hustler. I don't remember what he's got.
Okay.
That was in 2017. I can't remember yesterday, let alone 3 years ago. Okay, now we're going to look at my step IR at 14.175 megahertz. Stand by.
This is great stuff.
I'm learning a lot.
Okay, guys, I'm back. Let's see. So this is my step IR, and the controller is set for I forget 14.175, and its lowest SWR is at 14.166. And at 175, it's still, let's see, 175. At 175, oh, come on. My eyes aren't what they used to be. Oh, 75.
Up here. I think it beat to the
It's
right.
1.27. When I put the cursor here, there's an area up here. You can see that, and it shows what the frequency and SWR is for that cursor trace, and that's really kind of nice. So I can go right here, and it should say 1.99 to 1. So I haven't got it right on the line. So that's the 2-to-1 line. So anyway, that's my tight, or my my step IR and beam antenna on that date. So far we've been looking at static data that I captured with my VNWA. At this point, I'm going to reach across and pull up my antenna for 160 meters. So I'll show you how you would use a VNWA in the field. First, you have to have a PC, and you have to have a USB port on it. And you plug the USB into the VNWA. You plug it into the same port that you always use for the VNWA, so you don't have to recalibrate it. And then you attach the antenna. And I'm attaching, well, let's do the 80 meter first. I'm attaching my 80 meter antenna to the connection. And now I have to tell it, okay, what's the start frequency? So for 80 meters, it's 3.5 megahertz. So I change that to 3.5, and it goes to 4.0. 4.0. So I've just set up the range of frequency that I want to scan. And I say, okay. And now I do a single sweep. And that's what it looks like today. That's live. That's not Memorex. Now, one of the things you can do is you can say continuous sweep and see it kind of moves around a little bit. But that's,
you're on a real antenna, and you're going to see signals on there too.
But again, I'm lower than 2.5 to 1 across most of the band, and notice we've moved the center point further down this way than when I had it before, because I adjusted it so that it would be this way. And so that's live, the current. Now I'm glad I started with 80 meters, because I'm going to put on the 160 meters antenna, and I'm going to do an 80 meter sweep. So let's look at what 80 meters would look like using the 160 meter antenna. So the range is still 80 meters is what I want to look at. Single sweep. Not so good. Now, if I change it to 160 meters, so that's 1.5 to 2.0, right?
1.8 to 2, but
You're in the AM band there.
Ah, yes. Memory just isn't what it used to be. Formula missing in any files. Want to run cancel. I don't know what that is. Let's see. Let's try this again. Let's make sure I've got it right. Start.
yeah, it's 1.8.
1.8, 2.0. Sometimes it wants to see the 0.0. And now if I do a single sweep, that's my 160 live.
I don't hear anybody. Band must be dead.
Price.
Actually, everybody's hearing your sweep going by.
Now the final antenna is the step IR.
Are you IDing when you're doing that, Mike?
No, I don't. I think that falls under the low power.
Incidental.
It's yes. Okay, let's change the start. 14.0 to 14.350. Do a single sweep. Oh. And now the nice thing is, can you all see me in the little box on your thing? Okay, so I don't have to take this off. The nice thing about the step IR is that it has bands of metal that go in and out, and it changes the director, the derivative element, and the reflector continually as you move up and down the band. So currently it is set to auto track at 14.150 megahertz, and you'll notice it has the lowest SWR at 14.18 megahertz. And let's see, 14.50. There's 14.50. It's 1.38 to 1. Still pretty darn good. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to push the button on here, and instead of 14.150, I'm going to tell it to go up 100 kilohertz.
Why don't you do continuous sweep while you're doing it?
Oh.
We can see the
Yeah.
magic happen.
Okay, all right. Hey, that's a good idea. I never thought of that. All right, so single sweep. And we want to do continuous sweep. Now, didn't take long to get there. That's 14,250. And 14,250 is, I'm going to turn off the continuous. It's not fast enough. 14,250 is right there. Now, the latest software for this controller allows me to tweak these so that I can get it even closer than that. And I did that. And since then, I've been having some difficulties on the reverse. So I put it back to normal, and I'll figure out what's going on at a later date. But you can see how having a step IR allows you to get the most power out of your rig and into the ether to make contacts. So the fact that your rig will support SWRs of 8 or 10 to 1 and with a tuner, and so you're not getting out nearly as much power as I am. So they're not inexpensive, but they're not that much more expensive than trapped dipole or something like that. And I found it to be an excellent antenna and basically it covers 40 meters and 30 meters as a dipole and 20 through 6 as a 3-element beam. So it's now 7:51. My goal was to finish this by 8 o'clock. I'm open for questions.
Can you click on S11 for me, Mike?
Click on S11.
Yeah, you called S11. S11 Smith.
Smith. Okay, you didn't say Smith.
Okay, now I want you to go up to measure at the top
Okay.
and click port extensions. P.
Okay.
And then start, I think you can actually, port 1, go to point 1, port 1, and try rotating your mouse thing. You know, your mouse wheel. Can you put it?
Oh, yeah.
There you go. And I put it on continuous sweep first. Go to continuous. Let's see if that does it now, and do the port extensions. What we're doing is simulating moving along the, it's not changing. Why is that?
I don't know.
It could be because we don't want to be in picoseconds. We want to change it from picoseconds to something else. Nanoseconds. Yeah, now try it. Okay, not doing what I expected. Never mind.
Never mind.
Are we on continuous? Are we sweeping right now?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't quite understand. You should see that whole thing rotate there, that whole curve. And
Yeah.
And since I'm not controlling it, I can't play to figure it out. Would you like to see one other thing you can do?
Sure.
Can I share the screen for a minute?
Yes, you can. Let
Can you give
me
it back to
unshare
me?
mine.
Let's see if I can, okay. Here is, okay, so to share this, what do I do now? Because I'm not, no, here we go. Where do I share?
Hover over the display, and at the bottom you should see a button that says share.
Oh, there it is, share screen at the
Yep,
bottom.
like that.
And I'm going to share this one, share. And I'm going to maximize that. And what this is actually, Mike mentioned it, but this is using his analyzer in the time domain reflectometer mode. And basically what you're doing is you're doing a sweep from the lowest frequency it'll work at, in this case 10 kilohertz. We did it to 600 megahertz. And then we told it mathematically to do the inverse Fourier transform which takes us from the frequency domain to the time domain. And so this is now, you're seeing me move the cursor, right? I can do that.
Yep.
This is now time. This trace here is time. And this is the amount of energy reflected back because it's time, it's distance. So right over here is where the energy comes out of the VNA. And this is a distance of, it's in nanoseconds, but I don't, yes, it's because of the coax we were using, the time that in the coax, so many meters per nanosecond, if you will. This is 33.5 meters. And this is 63.3 meters. And 0.3 here is 76.1. What we're looking at is the alternate site repeater antenna back when we had a problem with it. And it turns out that this point right here is where the energy goes through the fire protector, lightning protector, the lightning protector. This is not supposed to be here. This is supposed to, this a straight line is good. This is not supposed to be here. And this is where the energy hits the antenna. So the antenna, you see the antenna, the antenna doesn't look like 50 ohms at all frequencies, and that's why you get energy reflected, or why this looks like this, if you will. Anyway, it turned out what this was water in the transmission line. And this is the point where we had a jumper went around from the hard line going up the tower to the rotor, and then farther up the tower to the antenna. And when we changed out this particular piece of transmission line, this flexible jumper, that went away. So this was using a TDR mode to diagnose, and you can see the where is the 147.04 kilohertz is 4 right here. This is what the VSWAR was measuring there, which was the return loss. I think this is return loss minus 5.15 dB. And the VSWAR green is VSWAR, and I don't see the numbers here, but it was like 2.5 to 1 or something in that order. Yeah, that would be about right. 1, 2, 2.5 to 1. And the antenna should have been down below 1 to below 2 to 1, 1.5 to 1 or something.
Oh,
So,
it's from the water and the lightning arrestor that occurred?
no, we have water in the coax jumpers that went around the rotator. And when we changed them out, Chris, NHCAL, climbed the tower, unhooked it, and let the water pour out, and we knew that our diagnosis was correct. What happened was that when the jumpers got made, this is my theory anyway, they put shrink tubing, they were crimped connectors, they put shrink tubing over them. And when they got installed, those jumpers, they wrapped them and the connections with waterproofing tape, but they didn't wrap it out past the end of the shrink tubing, and they didn't use the shrink tubing with the adhesive lining in it. So there could be a water leak at those connectors. So the water got into the coax. And interestingly enough, the VSWAR would get better when it got cold out, when it went below about minus 20, because, or not minus 20, about 20 degrees. Then the water apparently froze. It had some contaminants in it, so it didn't freeze right at 32. And when it froze, it it became less of a conductor and we had better VSWR. So we had good days and bad days with the repeater for that winter. We suffered. And when it rained out, that was not good. But just another thing that you can do with a modern VNA, which this is all done in software. This is this inverse Fourier transform is all, it's all mathematical thing that's done by the software that's used with Mike's VNA, and most VNAs you buy, I think all of them now in the software, they have the capability to do this. Okay, just thought you might be interested in that.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Actually, I'm glad you showed that because it also showed what I was talking about earlier. The lightning arrestor had just a little bit of blip, but when we first had that problem, there was a big blip there, and we changed out the lightning arrestor, and
Yeah,
then
we
there
had
was
it.
just a
We
little
had a
one.
previous one where we did it, where we found the lightning arrestor bad. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I had
So
forgotten that actually. But
yeah, yeah. Anyway, that's kind of what I had for everybody. This is a precursor to next month's presentation. Going to be by Cecil. He's going to talk about the micro.
Nano.
Nano. I always want to be micro. Nano's too small for me, you know. Nano VNAs, what's out there, and he's done a lot of research about and decided you've bought a number of them, I understand, and so his presentation will be about the Nano VNAs that are available out there for anywhere from $65 to $125, $150, something like that, and what the differences are and what you might want to use to go with this. Now, one of the advantages of the Nano VNAs is they have a display right there, and my tired eyes couldn't see. I like this 27-inch screen here, okay? I like using a PC, and the Nano VNAs will in fact hook up to a PC and give you the big screen, but thank you, Jerry. Jerry is showing a Nano VNA, and you can see, maybe a little hard to see, but
Yeah, it's hard for reflections.
if you're out in the field and you want to know what's going on right now and you don't want to carry a laptop, it may well be the best way to go. With that, unless there are any other questions or comments, let's call it a day.
Oh, one of the things you didn't show though is one of the tracings you can put on there is the frequency response of the antenna, so you can show where it's resonant. I wonder why you don't show that.
Didn't think about it.
Oh.
Actually, he did and he did. I mean, he showed it at the end of the coax, but that you can't look for resonance there. You have to get back to the antenna. That's what I was trying to do with the delay, but and it didn't work out for us. But that will rotate that whole thing, and you can see the point that it goes from capacitive to inductive.
Yeah, well, that's the way I like to use mine, is take out the coax and adjust the antenna for resonance. But I did learn something here I hadn't thought about, then going back inside and seeing what was happening at the end of the coax, at this end of the coax. That's a good point. I'll have to do that.
Oh.
Get your exercise that way too.
Well, I already got the exercise climbing up and down the roof.
Cecil, did you see where the two guys doing all the development of the software have said they're not going to do it anymore for the Nano VNA because of the guy that's trying to enforce GPL?
Yeah, I've seen some of that. One of the guys, well, one of them is a lady, I believe, G6AM,
really?
Kathy. But this Lord is the one, that's his stage name. He just put a bunch of releases, new software, and full sources on a repository available for everyone.
Oh, okay.
So that's there's a group called Group IO, like our Group IO, but there's another subgroup of that that's about the nano VNAs.
Yeah, that's what I watch.
And
Remember
in the
that.
past year, they've had something like, I think it's currently about 16,000, postings on there.
Right.
It's a whole lot of grass around the nuggets. So it's kind of hard to wade through it sometimes. But anyway,
Well, we look forward to your presentation next month,
Yeah.
Cecil.
Yeah.
And
Steve,
All right,
Other
thanks,
than that-
everyone.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah,
Thanks, Mike.
you're welcome.
Meeting.